Alright, so we're in the shop today, about 100 degrees outside, so good day to do some work in the shop. I was digging some new potatoes for my green beans, and my potato fork, the handle broke. So this is not uncommon. Anytime you want to use a tool, usually the handle is rotten and it's going to break. So I could go to the store. It's about a 30-minute drive into town. It'd take me about 30 minutes to go through the store to find a handle for this, and then about 30 minutes back home. That's if the store has a handle like this, which is getting harder and harder to find a handle for your equipment. So today's video is about just making your own handle, and what I'm thinking is, if I can make this handle in less than an hour and a half, and I don't spend any money and any gas to get there, it's going to be a wash. So I'm not opposed to buying a handle. It's just these days your time and money and gas just starts adding up. So we're going to see if we can make a handle today, and the first thing we need to do is find a piece of wood. Alright, we got some hickory, we got some oak, got some pine 2x4s, but I like to make my handles out of hickory. They're going to last the longest and be rigid. So, looks like here's a piece of hickory that I milled up last year. You want it to be as clear as you can get it, or at least a clear section. Doesn't have a lot of knots in it. So, looks like I got two pieces here. Let me look at this other one. Looks like we got a pretty clear section on this one. So, we'll see if we can make a handle out of this. Alright, so next step is to measure our handle. And I'm going to add 2 or 3 inches for the part that broke off. So it looks like this handle was about 24 inches long originally. And to be honest, it's a little short for me. I mean, it's made to dig potatoes, but I felt like if I had a little more handle out here, maybe I wouldn't have to bend over as far, or I could dig deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and make a 36-inch handle. And I mean, the deal is, if it's too long, I can always cut it off, but it's harder to add material on than cut it off. So we'll start out with a 36. We may trim it down if we need to, if it doesn't feel comfortable for us. All right, so here we got our piece of wood. Like I said, you want the clearest section of the wood. So it looks like this part of my milled piece of lumber is pretty clear. So what I'm going to do is just cut a 36-inch piece off, and then I'll rip it down the middle and start turning our handle. So let's get a 36-inch measurement from the end. And since I'm turning this on the lathe, I'm going to go ahead and add a few inches for where I chuck it up in the lathe. So I'm going to cut it at 40 inches. And I will say I milled this hickory probably the fall of last year, so it's probably still a little green, but that's a nice thing about handles. It's perfectly fine to make your handle out of green wood. It's actually a little better for it to be a little green. So anyway, next step is to rip this up. So now that we have our end squared off, we're going to find center, and the way you do that is just go from corner to corner, mark an X on the end of your stock. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to turn this down, but the closer you get to the center, the less waste you're going to have. And I like to just drill a little pilot hole on this harder wood so I don't have to hammer it in too much. So I'll get the drill and we'll drill a little pilot hole, trying to maximize the length of your turning. And some people put a little wax on this live end, keeps your wood from burning, but this is just a handle, so we're not going to do a whole lot of that. Taper on this end, we've got our taper on this end. So now all we need to do is a bit of sanding, and I think we'll be able to try it out. As you can see, I added about a foot to this handle, so I'm going to have about another foot to work with. So we'll see if that works better. All right, on to sanding. You want to sand with 80 grit first. All right, so I got my 80 grit sandpaper. My wife has agreed to sand for me, so I'm gonna give her a little demonstration, and I'm gonna let her have it. You want wide strokes to be kind of smooth out. All the imperfections. Got it?
Think I can do it?
I think you can.
Alright.
Don't hurt yourself.
Wait, let's move. Like that. That's so cool. Oh my god. You want it to go all the way to the end? That? Oh, that's so cool!
Alright, so instead of trying to put any kind of oil or treatment on this handle to keep it from rotting, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm actually just going to burn the wood. I think the technical term for it is shishogi-ban. It's actually a Japanese technique, but you just char the wood and it keeps microorganisms from getting into the wood and rotting the wood. So we're going to try it for this handle and see if that works. Otherwise, I would just not even treat the handle whatsoever, because you want it slick. You don't want your hands to grab on it because they'll give you blisters. So we're going to try this technique to see if we can get a little more life out of our handle. So here we are at the bandsaw. I'm going to cut off the ends and we can start reassembling our potato fork. So we've got a little tang on our fork. So what I'm going to do is just drill a hole in the end of my handle for the tang. That looks pretty good. Wasn't able to come all the way down on my shoulder, but I think the tang is well secured in there. Let's see if our other end will fit. Alright, so we got a nice fit on that end. So let's put a couple of nails in, or screws. Probably just put a screw in. That way, easy to take out. I'm going to use a stainless steel screw. Maybe it'll last a little longer. And then on this end, I think I'll just use a nail and wrap it around. Alright, I like the length of this handle, feels good in the hand, real sturdy, worked fine, lasts a long time. Alright, so we got our handle installed, and one thing I meant to do is rejuvenate this plastic part. So it's kind of oxidized and brittle, so we're going to see if we can spruce that up a little bit. So I'm going to take my torch, see if we can bring it back to life. All right, so there we go, almost as good as new.